One thing that came up in my dialogue with Majid was the four reasons or the four ingredients he posits as being necessary to birth a Islamist or a jihadist. One of those, by his lights, is an identity crisis. And, I think that may be true, but you could argue that life itself is just one long identity crisis. I mean, we all have identity crises. We all spend our lives, in some basic sense, learning how to live. And it's very tempting for many people, whether they've been raised in a religious tradition or not, to go to some book that purports to have all the answers for how to live. And it turns out it matters what book you get, and it matters what those answers are. And to the degree that you believe those answers, to the degree that those ideas seem compelling to you, well then they can't help but affect your life and affect the lives of others. It's important not to trivialize what is happening here in this phenomenon of a global jihadist insurgency. When you look at the kinds of people who join ISIS, for instance, and you look at what their experience is, and you listen to their testimony of just how much meaning they get at this point in their lives, waking up each day as a jihadist, preparing to die or fighting apostates or meting out justice to the apostates in their midst. This runs absolutely counter to the intuitions of most secular people who just view ISIS as essentially a bug light attracting all the psychopaths on earth. And there are many secular liberals who imagine that what we see in these terrorist groups now is a collection of people who would be doing terrible things anyway. Right? These are bad people. Bad people are always going to do bad things. Right? That's not, in fact, what's happening. These are, I'm sure there are some psychopaths in these groups, but these, for the most part, we're talking about people finding meaning and following a recipe, right? And the recipe, the key ingredient is jihad and self-sacrifice toward this end, and an expectation of martyrdom and a belief in paradise. And you only have to get a few of those ideas just burned onto the hard drive to explain the kind of behavior we see, and to explain the emotional satisfaction of living this way. I mean, just picture what's happening here. You get all of the spiritual satisfaction that many of us know in other contexts. In my 20s, I spent 2 years on silent meditation retreats, mostly in a Buddhist context, right? So that's kind of an extreme thing to do. Dropped out of college, and I was living in isolation and spending months in silence. It's certainly not a normal thing to do. It was not. I didn't know anyone else in my generation doing it. Right now, all of that was being framed by specific ideas, just about the utility of using my attention this way, why it made sense. I mean, there was a doctrine and a set of beliefs that made sense of this behavior. Now, that could have been a jihadist project if I believed those things. But what a jihadist has is arguably the same level of spiritual concern. I mean, the jihadist is seeking a kind of purity of his attention. He's seeking a lack of superficiality, a profundity. I mean, he wants to make life sacred, right? This is a religious enterprise, a spiritual enterprise. But in addition to just having his attention burn through all of the temporary and ultimately meaningless false attractions of this life, beauty and fame and wealth and everything else that every other spiritual tradition invites you to cut through, he gets to be a kind of spiritual James Bond, right? He gets to carry an AK-47 and kill the bad guys. So he's not only like someone who got really into yoga and got captured by all of that. He's someone who got to be a Navy SEAL too, right? So it's the whole package. It's very easy to see how this is totally captivating to especially young men. All of the components are in play. There's a philosophy. You get to just argue about how many angels dance on the head of a pin, and you get to fight with your brothers in arms against cosmic evil, the infidels, who you are in some kind of eternal war with. And so the energy of this enterprise is totally understandable, and it is not a matter of just bad people doing bad things. Many of these people, I would argue even most, would have done very good things under the sway of different ideas. And you can see Majid is a perfect example of this. Majid almost was an Islamist for the rest of his life. And now look at what a productive, articulate, wise person he is. It could have gone another way, and the difference that makes the difference is just a matter of ideas.